Today we'll be looking at Firework, a Chinese indie horror game where you play as police investigator Lin Lixun, unraveling the haunting mystery behind the death of the entire Tian family. As we investigate further, we'll descend deeper and deeper into a world of superstition, forgotten rituals, and ancient customs. So let's get into it. We arrive in a town called Shintan, and this name itself could be a reference to the Chinese philosophical movement of Shintan, essentially meaning pure conversation. During the Wei Jin period, Shintan thinkers would use Taoist language and concepts to reinforce Confucian ethics, blending the Taoist metaphysical, pseudo-religious abstractions with the more practical moral doctrine of Confucianism. So this might hint at a central theme of this game, this consistent tension between superstition and reason. As a matter of fact, this graffiti on the wall says, "Believe in science, not superstition," essentially warning us that unquestioned superstitious beliefs, no matter how culturally significant, can lead to actual harm. Now, this isn't to say that everything we will experience in this game has a grounded scientific explanation. We will actually come face to face with plenty of inexplicable spiritual phenomena. I suppose it's simply saying that many of the tragedies we'll encounter during our investigation could have been avoided had people not blindly followed their superstitious beliefs. Anyway, we're here to investigate a coffin that caught fire during a funeral. Our car broke down and our partner is trying to fix it, but his flashlight is running out of battery, so we go buy one. We reach this small store, but no one is there. Only a small bowl with burning paper. Most likely someone was burning spirit money, a Chinese folk tradition used to worship deities, or most likely in this case, used in funerals to ensure the deceased has some means in the afterlife. Eventually, the store owner shows up. We buy that battery and go give it to our partner. While he fixes the car, we go check out the scene where the fire happened. While making our way to the scene, this area keeps looping. Under this lantern store, a blood stain shows up. After another loop, the money we used to buy the battery shows up. And then after a final loop, a door. We enter to see the store sells all sorts of materials for traditional funerals, including these paper dolls, which we will see a lot throughout the game. This is called Qijia, or Taoist paper art. These could resemble different deities, or in funerals could even be a sort of stand-in for the deceased. The note on the altar reads, "Wang Jingkai, the store owner has passed away from illness. Please deliver 6 wreaths, 2 paper dolls, and 2 candles in 3 days. So the funeral we're supposed to go to is for the store owner we just bought the battery from. We take one of the candles and light it so that we can look at this ledger on this paper doll. It's completely filled with debts owed to the store owner. And on the last page is our name, saying we borrowed a battery and therefore owe the store owner 2 yuan. Now, we did pay, but I suppose it would still count as a debt because, since the store owner is dead, we are supposed to offer the money through some form of ritual, like burning spirit money on that bowl. And when we leave the lantern store, we find a note explaining this very debt process. It reads, "If you take a dead person's belongings, you will owe a debt to the dead. If you don't return them in time, maladies will befall you, or worse, tragedies will befall your whole family. Return them as soon as possible to avoid this catastrophe." Now, it's always difficult to trace back the exact origins of these types of folk beliefs, but this one is totally possible to really exist, as it fits neatly with broader Taoist or Buddhist beliefs surrounding karma and other types of spiritual debts. One particularly interesting example is that many Chinese coin collectors actively avoid burial coins, believing that they carry some bad luck. Now, before the use of that paper spirit money we talked about earlier, the dead were sometimes buried with clay coins, or even gold-plated ones, to bring into the afterlife. And it's believed that keeping these coins, especially if they were taken from a grave, can bring misfortune, illness, or just plain bad luck, essentially making you, or someone close to you, pay that spiritual debt through some kind of suffering. And just after reading this note, 2 ancestor coins show up in that bloody wall. We will learn much later why these possibly grave-robbed ancestor coins are relevant to the story. To the right, we see on the obituary that a volunteer teacher at the local primary school has passed away. Her name is blacked out, however. After yet another loop of this area, we place those ancestor coins in the burning bowl, which causes the loop to be broken. So we have essentially paid off our debt to the store owner. We finally reach the funeral house to see that it was indeed the small store owner who died. We take a look at the coffin to see a phone, clearly used to dial 110, the number for emergency services in China. Examining the inside of the coffin, we notice the smell of a pyrotechnic powder, mainly used for fireworks. Looking at the outside of the coffin, we notice that, although badly singed, the wreaths and dolls were not burnt, meaning that the fire most likely started from inside the coffin. We go to tell our police partner our findings, and on our way to him, we see a woman at the store, but when we get close, she disappears. We keep walking and a doll and a coffin show up behind us. Then a wreath blocks our path. A ledger shows up on the store counter. "You are next" is written on the page. Now, like me when I first played this, you might think that we still owe a spiritual debt to the store owner because of that battery. But remember, that's already been paid. On the ledger was a distorted name, and it can't be Lixun because that was written on the ledger before, completely normally. And remember, the ledger says, "You are next," as if warning someone that the store owner knows personally. Now, instead of our police car is a black hearse. It's kind of like a regular car, but it's a little heavier at the back so you can drift it more easily. Lixun passes out. He's talking to someone, explaining that he sees a white mist. He sees a black hearse, driving slowly, but he can't seem to catch up to it. The hearse is carrying his father. We wake up inside a hospital. Our partner tells us that we fainted near the funeral shed. Apparently this is due to some condition that Lixun has had since he was a kid, where he just sort of randomly passes out. However, it didn't seem that we were exactly asleep, more as if we were transported into another world. It was as if we were able to indirectly communicate with the deceased store owner. We eventually get up and hear the phone ringing. We answer it to explain that the doctor isn't present, but all we hear is this Ju-on the Grudge type sound. Also, a cool way to make Kayako not scary at all is by seeing the actress when they weren't filming. When examining the IV bag, Lixun gives us some information about his past. He says, "When I was a kid, I used to get these random fevers frequently. The doctors at the hospital could not find the cause of it. My grandma knew a shaman. She said I was born at a yin date and at a yin time, so I attract spirits naturally. The last time I saw the shaman was at Dad's funeral. She sighed when she saw me and said a few words. It's heaven's will that you can see ghosts. You will become a policeman and help the dead find justice." There's quite a few interesting details in this story. First, it seems that Lixun's family might have been quite superstitious themselves, and so our investigation in this town will no doubt impact him particularly, as he will be able to perhaps relate to some of the stories we will learn about. Secondly, that his father has died, and in that white mist, while he was passed out, he saw a black hearse, which he knew instinctively was for his father. He was chasing it, but he could never catch it. His father no doubt died prematurely, and most likely left Lixun with some unresolved issues now in his adulthood, as he is still attempting to, symbolically, catch up to his father. And finally, there's the fact that Lixun was born at a yin date and at a yin time. Now, we're not going to dive into the intricacies of Taoist metaphysics, but very basically, yin might be associated with darkness, coldness, or stillness, while yang can be seen as light, heat, or activity. From a more psychological perspective, this can be seen as a kind of dichotomy between the unconscious and conscious, the yin being the unconscious and yang being the conscious. Then there's the 4 pillars of destiny, or Bazi, which is essentially just Chinese astrology. A person's birth year, month, day, and hour are each said to have either yin or yang characteristics and properties. And so if someone is born at a time with a strong yin influence, like Lixun, it's believed that they could have a particular sensitivity to more unconscious phenomena, including, of course, the world of spirits. On the TV, we hear about a case of the entire Tian family found dead in this town. A grandfather, a grandmother, and granddaughter died from consuming rat poison. And the daughter-in-law, the little girl's mother, hung herself in another room. And she was the main suspect of the poisoning, as it was rumored that she suffered from some extreme mental health issues. Moving on though, in the next room, we meet with Dr. Ye. He asks if we want to smoke. We explain that we don't smoke, and he finds that odd, as every cop he knows is a chain smoker. Then he also tells us to keep this habit of his a secret. After all, how can he tell people of this town to not smoke when he does it himself? We decide to ask him about the store owner and how he died. Dr. Ye didn't get to see the body, so he doesn't know, but the locals say he died horribly, as if killed by a ghost. He speculates that people might be somewhat on edge due to the news of the familicide that we coincidentally just heard on the news. Apparently the store owner was the one spreading the rumor that the daughter-in-law was a madwoman that went crazy and murdered the entire family. And now the residents, superstitious as they are, believe that her spirit killed the store owner for spreading such rumors. The lights go out and Dr. Ye tells us to grab some candles from the black van outside, while he gets the power back on. We grab the candle and a lighter, and notice some fireworks in the back of the van, and the fire in the store owner's coffin smelled of fireworks. I guess we'll have some questions for Dr. Ye. He's gone though, so I guess we move on, and use the candle to burn away the cobwebs covering the door.
The cobwebs are now removed.
The appearance of these cobwebs seem a little random, so I can't help but try to read into it. Could they be symbolic of our dive into this case, uncovering something forgotten and ignored, to the point of growing cobwebs, symbolically? Or since we are technically about to learn about two cases, that being the fire at the store owner's funeral and the familicide of the Tian family, could these cobwebs then be symbolic of how these cases are deeply interconnected with each other?
The fuck are you talking about?
Outside now, we come across a willow tree. Lixun says his childhood home had one just like it. His grandmother believed that the tree was the root of their family. His father, however, did not believe this kind of superstition. But on the day of his father's funeral, Lixun remembers something strange. He could hear the tree whine, as if it was crying. At a first glance, this might simply reflect Lixun's own relationship with these traditional beliefs, showing how the story we will uncover resonates with him deeply. But the willow tree could also serve as a symbolic stand-in for Lixun's father himself. Strong, silent, and of course deeply rooted within his psyche. Because as we'll see, Lixun's own personal arc is deeply shaped by the death of his father. But the willow doesn't just appear in this scene, it's pretty prominent in the game's start screen and even promotional material, which could suggest it's more representative of the game's overall themes. The willow then could represent family as a whole, something living, rooted in tradition, and attempting to bend with the changing weather. Or the changing times, I suppose. Moving on though, we reach the breaker and do a fun puzzle to get the lights working again. And when we do, that woman that appeared at the store shows up. Her name is Chen, a volunteer teacher at the local primary school. She was the teacher of Fangfang, the little girl part of the familicide we saw in the news. If you recall, Fangfang's mother was the one accused of killing the whole family, and then herself. However, Miss Chen knew the family and simply does not believe that Fangfang's mother would ever do anything to hurt her daughter. We ask her if she has any evidence. She says she's looking for some. We ask her why she's looking in the clinic. She says that we'll know after she sends it to the press. We tell her to not take anything from the clinic, as it would cause some problems if there was just some Nancy Drew wannabe taking all the Benadryl from the hospital for quote-unquote evidence. We finally formally introduce ourselves to her and take our leave. She also seems to have brought this red umbrella, even though it's not raining, and it appears to be wet. Retracing our steps now, we look at the TV again. Apparently there's a rumor surrounding the Tian family case. 7 days after the incident, residents reported getting a phone call from the public phone market, a business owned by the Tian family, where all they could hear was the sound of a rope tightening, as if something was being hung. This, no doubt, would be Miss Zhao, Fangfang's mother, who hung herself shortly after allegedly killing the family. The phone begins to ring and we see two voicemails. The first is presumably from the police department. They wanted to speak with Dr. Ye because they received a report that Miss Zhao visited his clinic just 30 minutes before the incident. The second voicemail is Dr. Ye's response. He says that she did visit to buy some medicine for her mother-in-law's cough, so the grandmother in the incident. Perhaps I should have stated earlier that Miss Zhao was living with her husband's parents, and her daughter, of course. As I understand it, this is quite a common living arrangement, especially in the more rural areas of China. Dr. Ye states that she left after getting the medicine, and overall seems very willing to cooperate with the police. We then hear the black van outside start. We go outside and it seems to be heading to the funeral shed. However, even with a candle, it's too dark to see. A forest appears behind us, which leads us into the Tian family home. The door on the ground floor leads to the public phone market, the family business we talked about before. We solve a simple puzzle to get a phone number and we call it. And it's as if we get a phone call from the past, someone reminding someone else to pick up Fangfang's cake for her birthday, and telling them that half the slip was inside a pocket and the other half went into the washing machine. This is a bit of a tangent, but I really like when horror media uses technology in some unnatural, or I guess supernatural way. The best and perhaps most obvious example is obviously the Japanese horror film The Ring. It's actually not that easy to pull off in a scary and believable way, because it can come off as very gimmicky sometimes. Like in that one Paranormal Activity movie. I don't remember which one, there's like 10 of them. I'm not joking, look it up, I've seen all of them. Each one is worse than the last. They try to use this Xbox Connect thing, and although I get what they were going for, it just feels very like planned out and unnatural. Especially since nobody has a fucking Connect.
Did you see that?
What the fuck was that?
It's Connect for Xbox 360.
If you don't remember it, the Connect was just Microsoft's really flaccid attempt at competing with the Nintendo Wii.
Nice car.
Before we leave this room, there's an interesting detail. The death of the family happened on September 15th. However, the calendar in the public phone market shows September 22nd, 7 days after. And if you remember, residents had been receiving calls from the public phone market where all they could hear was a rope tightening, representing Miss Zhao hanging herself 7 days after her death. I believe this is most likely due to the Taoist tradition of Pouji, meaning something like 7th day or the first 7, where it is said that 7 days after a person's death, their spirit will visit the living world one last time. Anyway, we'll leave and go up these stairs to find half the cake order slip in these pants. And we follow that red umbrella. We then have to solve this little puzzle, our only clue being this note, which reads, "Mirrors can reflect reality and see through people's hearts. Look at yourself in the mirror and find the truth." This could possibly be a reference to the Chinese Buddhist tradition, mainly the Mirror of Retribution, a mirror found in the Diyu, the Chinese underworld, where souls have to look into it and confront themselves before being judged. When looking at the mirror to solve the puzzle, Lixun has an introspective moment. He says, "I rarely look in the mirror. Grandma said I have too much yin energy. I would be possessed by ghosts if I look into a mirror. After my dad passed away, I secretly looked into a mirror once. In it, I saw Dad's clothes hanging on the wall behind me. It was a green police uniform, dripping with blood. I never looked into mirrors since then. I can't remember what I looked like when I was a child. It feels strange to see myself." We could conclude from this that Lixun's father, who was also a police officer, most likely died in the line of duty. And Lixun's avoidance of mirrors, to the point where he doesn't even remember what he looked like as a child, can be interpreted as a broader metaphor for his lack of introspection when processing his father's death. It's very common for children to understand death only in extremely abstract terms, never fully being able to conceptualize the actual permanence of death. Lixun likely maintained this abstract, childlike understanding of death as a sort of coping mechanism that allowed him to avoid confronting the painful reality that his father is gone. After solving the puzzle, we get the full slip, a cake order for Fangfang's birthday, set to be picked up 6 days after the Tian family incident. We can then assume that Fangfang's birthday was 7 days after the incident, and so the number 7 gains more meaning. The bathroom then turns into a morgue with a body on the table. Reading the autopsy report, we find that it's Miss Zhao, Fangfang's mother, who committed suicide just after the Tian family incident, and the main suspect of their deaths. We confirm that she did die from asphyxiation, with no other signs of a struggle. Her hair got tangled in some telephone cord, however, and the morticians had to cut it. Some hair appears in the sink, and we use some scissors to cut it and get a key. We use it on this circuit box and turn on one of the lights. Taking away the hair, we see pig's head on a birthday cake, the word libation written on its face. In some niche Chinese traditions, roasted pig might be seen at an offering table facing the deceased, as a part of a ritual meal for the dead. But more specific to this image the game has shown us, in some parts of China, a pig head might be used as an ancestral sacrifice, and sacrifice is a central theme to Miss Zhao's character. Of course, we have the word libation on its face, libation meaning a sort of offering to some deity, and I personally believe it's meant to show Miss Zhao's sacrifice as pure and honest. But of course we'll see that much later. After doing that, we come back to the normal world, except the ceiling is now covered in hair. You might be thinking that this is just a bit of a trope in overall Asian horror, you know, this overwhelming long black hair of some female spirit. However, it does seem to have some cultural background in the Chinese nugui, which essentially just means female spirit or woman spirit, but it specifically refers to vengeful female spirits with long hair, in a red or white dress, who has been wronged in some way, who died untimely and/or unjustly. Moving on though, we leave and see Miss Chen. She's looking for clues here. Lixun explains that he's read the autopsy reports. Miss Zhao committed suicide after seeing her family dead on the kitchen table. He says that even in the extreme shock of the situation, he would have still called an ambulance first, showing that Lixun, much like the investigators at the time, might believe that Miss Zhao was the one who killed her family by poisoning them. Miss Chen explains that after Fangfang's father, Miss Zhao's husband, passed away, Fangfang was Miss Zhao's only mental support. She loved her daughter deeply, and even though everyone thought Miss Zhao had lost her mind, Miss Chen does not believe that. She doesn't believe any of it. We ask her why she went to Dr. Ye's office, and if she believes he had anything to do with it. Miss Chen says he has a strong motive for committing the murder. She explains that 2 years ago, Fangfang's father, Tian Yu, before passing away, had an epileptic seizure and was sent to Dr. Ye's clinic for some emergency treatment. But unfortunately, he was either too late or it didn't work, and he passed away. The grandfather, Tian Shangrong, that's Tian Yu's father, believed that Dr. Ye killed him and got a group of people to smash Dr. Ye's clinic and broke his ribs. Dr. Ye ended up losing a lot of money due to the Tian family. And not only that, Miss Zhao had gone to the clinic just before the Tian family was found dead. Lixun explains to Miss Chen that Dr. Ye said Miss Zhao went to the clinic for cough medicine and that there were other patients who witnessed it at that time. But Miss Chen hasn't really found any sort of concrete proof, so she leaves. We go outside to see some moldy piece of cake next to some candles. This would be most likely a food offering for Fangfang. It is not uncommon for traditional Chinese funerals to have these sort of food offerings, and the type of food offered can sometimes have a symbolic meaning. Cake, in this case, typically means an offering of happiness and sweetness in the afterlife, which makes sense as an offering to such a young child. I wonder if perhaps Miss Chen placed them. Whenever she talks about the Tian family, she seems to put special importance on Fangfang specifically. Or was it perhaps Fangfang's mother who placed it on the 7th day after her death, the day of Fangfang's birthday? And I do think it's pretty clear this offering is meant for Fangfang, as after we pick up this key from under the cake, we hear a car starting, and when we look back, a portrait of the young girl shows up, but when we go up, it disappears, almost as if it was simply leading us to where we should go next. And if you remember in the very beginning, a paper doll of a little girl did very much the same thing. We will see that paper doll more than once, and I believe it's meant to represent Fangfang herself, leading us to find out the truth behind her family's death. We use the key on the main door, and just before we do, a phone in the public phone market starts ringing. We pick up the phone and someone says, "Hey officer." Lixun manages to instantly recognize that it's Dr. Ye. He's shocked that we managed to recognize his voice so instantly, but Lixun observes that Dr. Ye also recognized ours just after hearing a simple hello. This is all extremely suspicious. After all, we just heard a car starting and Dr. Ye's van is the only car we've seen in this town. And just after we heard it, he calls the Tian's public phone market. How did he know that anyone was even here? Unless he was watching us the whole time. After talking about rumors we've already gone over, Dr. Ye gets to the point and says he's curious about what we're doing in the Tian's house. We explain that there's something about the case we wish to find out. We ask him about how Miss Zhao went to his clinic just before the incident. He explains that she did. It was flu season, and so the clinic was full and many other patients saw her there. We ask if the Tians usually use his clinic when they were sick, because according to Miss Chen, they, to put it lightly, were not on the best of terms. Dr. Ye lets out a chuckle. He says that they stopped going to him after the death of their son. That's Miss Zhao's husband and Fangfang's father. I'm just reiterating this sort of thing because the names and everything can get a little bit confusing at times. And Dr. Ye was pretty surprised himself when Miss Zhao showed up to his clinic asking for some cough medicine for her mother-in-law. But she left right after buying it. We thank Dr. Ye for his cooperation, but he seems a little uneasy. He says, "To be honest, when I asked whether you smoke in the clinic just now, you said no, and that you haven't investigated a case. I thought you were a rookie. It's really impressive that you managed to obtain these clues in such a short period of time. I'd like to know how you found these clues." Of course we don't know if Dr. Ye killed the Tian family or not, but his behavior does show signs that he is involved in some way or another. If you are simply an innocent bystander in this case, why would you care how particular clues were obtained, especially if they happen to adhere with your personal experience surrounding the case? You would only want to know how they were obtained, in case you were worried more would be found out. But like Lixun says after hanging up, Dr. Ye was in his clinic when the crime happened, and has many of his patients as witnesses. Something is definitely up with him. We just have to figure out what exactly. Someone says, "Please don't blame me," and we hear them light a fire. We are then again in the white mist we saw when we first passed out. Someone asks Lixun to tell them about his father. He says, "My dad was a criminal investigator. He had handled a lot of big cases. He was always busy and away from home. After his death, I finally saw his face clearly for the first time. I was young then. I just stared curiously at the small wound on his forehead. The adults often said that I looked a lot like him. Every time they said that, I would think of the wound, and my head would start aching. That feeling was like the bullet that killed my dad had taken root in my head." We wake up in Lixun's childhood bedroom. Lixun remembers being run over by a black van, but feels no pain. Like we talked about before, Lixun seems to have a particular sensitivity to the world of spirits, and much like the first time we passed out, sometimes what we see isn't exactly real, at least not in a conventional sense, but it does reference something real, or that happened in the past. Someone knocks on the door and says, "Get up and wash, it's time to eat." Lixun doesn't respond. Something isn't quite right. Lixun doesn't remember having a mirror in his room, and the pattern on it is suspiciously familiar to the one in the Tian household. He also doesn't remember ever buying sleeping pills. Again, someone calls us to come down and eat, and again, Lixun doesn't respond, but thinks to himself, "I've heard this voice before. It's the voice of the middle-aged woman on the phone. He's talking about that first phone call we had. The one that seemed to be from the past, a woman reminding someone of Fangfang's birthday, and warning about the cake slip being left in a pair of trousers that went to the wash. The best guess would be this woman calling us is the grandmother of Fangfang, the mother-in-law of Miss Zhao. It appears that, within this unconscious pseudo-spiritual world, Lixun's memories and other external spiritual phenomena mix together, the Tian family mirror, the sleeping pills, which will be vital to the Tian family story. And even thinking back on the first few moments of the game, it was unclear whether the black hearse was for the store owner or for Lixun's father. I suppose it could be just a case of Lixun being reminded of his own life while investigating. And so through the investigation of the Tian family murder, we will also uncover information about Lixun himself. While searching for these pieces of glass, we come across this little award that Lixun won for being a AAA student. Not quite quadruple A quality, but it's okay. We put the mirror back together. And we're back to the Tian's bathroom. We pick up a candle and finally make our way to the actual Tian household. In here, through some leftover police tape, is the living room, where we see a small altar dedicated to Tian Yu, Fangfang's father. And after solving a puzzle by tuning this radio to the right frequency, the kitchen door opens. Horror games be like, organize your sock drawer to open the door somehow. In the kitchen now, we see Miss Chen. We tell her that she was right. There seems to be more to this case than what was previously thought, even though we still don't have concrete evidence of anything yet. We tell her that this is a crime scene, and it would make things very difficult if she were to leave any traces or mess with it in any way. She understands and sees that we are dedicated to getting to the bottom of this, and she starts to look at us a little more favorably. We get a family portrait from this wine jar, and here we have almost everyone. The father, the daughter, the grandparents, but Fangfang's mother is missing. And this might be because, as we'll see in the story, there's always a certain amount of disconnect between her and the rest of the family. We place the picture on this frame and straighten it. We then turn to channel 21 on the television. They're announcing the lottery numbers. The TV turns off and we clean the screen to see the reflection of two people sitting on the couch. It's Mr. Tian, the grandfather or father-in-law, and Miss He Gulian, the grandmother or mother-in-law. The grandfather has been playing the lottery, and it seems they're having some money troubles, although the grandfather just lent money to his cousin to, in the grandmother's opinion, appear very wealthy and generous. He's also trying to get his son Tian Yu a good job at the bank he used to work at, but is not succeeding. They can't let people know they're running out of money, especially her. I assume her is their son's wife, Miss Zhao. You know how you can tell old people lived here? The thing over the TV. In every part of the world, for some reason, old people look at random household objects and think, just put some lingerie on that. The door to the grandparents' room opens up. Hanging above it is a red lantern, with what seems to be the Chinese character Ma, which essentially means don't or do not, so a clear warning to not enter. And it makes perfect sense. This is the room where we'll find out about one of the Tian family's deepest secret. Setting the grandfather clock to the correct time, determined by the Chinese lunar calendar, we learn that this time and place marks a secret rendezvous the grandfather had with a friend, who we'll find out later is Wang, the store owner. Mr. Tian was facilitating a meeting between him and one of his clients to sell some ancient artifacts belonging to some ancient officer, which had quite clearly been obtained through grave robbing. Mr. Tian, we discover, used to be involved in this himself, but seems to have stopped after his son married Miss Zhao. Now, with all his financial troubles, he's slowly returning to his old ways. As the conversation ends, a crow caws in the background, which is of course a traditional superstitious sign of bad luck. We then open the grandfather clock, which is clearly meant to be a symbolic act, like we're peering into the grandfather's state of mind at the time. Inside we find a set of scratch-off lottery tickets, but instead of numbers, each one contains a message. The first one reads, "Do you really think you can change your fate?" And then, "It's your son's bad luck to be born into the Tian family." And the last one simply says, "This is karma." Perhaps the crow wasn't just a symbol of bad luck, but of death as well, as not long after, their son, Tian Yu, dies. The grandmother believes his death is karmic retribution for Mr. Tian's grave robbing business, as karmic debt can be inquired by blood relatives as well, but he scoffs at her superstitions. However, we know from the fact that he stopped grave robbing after his son married Miss Zhao, and from the ominous messages on the scratch-off lottery tickets, that he did have superstitious beliefs himself. His dismissal of them now seems to be more of a way of coping than some newfound skeptic rationality. The grandfather had a hard time coping with his son's death and slept on the balcony every night. When we go in, we answer a phone call from the grandmother. She's calling Fangfang, saying that her dad is back and they will take her to see him. When we go to the entrance hall, we meet up with Miss Chen, looking at this doorway with musical notes. She says that Fangfang's diary had a very similar pattern on it, and that, just like her diary, there's a combination lock on it. She never learned the code, however, to, of course, respect her students' privacy. Miss Chen asks if she can come with us. Fangfang was a very special student to her, and she just wants to find out what truly happened to her. We accept. After all, Miss Chen might be able to give us some more insight, seeing as she does have some direct ties with the people in this case. The code is the first notes to a song called Farewell, a song that children at the elementary school loved and promised to sing to Miss Chen on the day that she would leave and stop teaching them. This might not seem too important, but it does show that Miss Chen was a great teacher who the children loved very much, and shows why she would be so focused on finding out the truth of what happened to Fangfang. Behind the door is a seemingly endless staircase. With no other options, we go down. We somehow end up at the entrance again, although the doorways are now blocked with these Taoist paper talismans, fulu. These can be used for all sorts of Taoist rituals, like exorcisms, healing, worship, or in some cases, to ward off some unwanted presence, spirits usually. It's like $10 on Amazon. On the wall we find a ripped page from Fangfang's diary. They all went on a trip to see a witch or a shaman. These are usually older women in more rural areas who claim to be able to contact spirits. And like before, the grandfather does not seem to want to participate in any of this. The shaman, or shamaness, is that a word? Told them that she saw their son and he missed them. The grandmother wants to start going there once a week so they can summon him again. Mr. Tian decides he doesn't want to go to this and decides to just stay home from now on. Now, I'm not one to judge other people's culture, and especially not their religious beliefs, but I personally find this concept of witches, shamans, or mediums as they're called in the English-speaking world, to just be plainly destructive. Attempting to speak to someone who is deceased itself is already a sign of denial within the grieving process, and if the person truly believes they are speaking to their dead loved ones, it'll just prolong that same grieving process, in some cases indefinitely. That person will never be able to reach any form of acceptance, much less move on with their lives. And you often find people who become essentially emotionally dependent on those few times where they get to quote-unquote speak to their relative. It straddles this sort of terrible middle ground, where they're neither dead nor are they alive. They're just perpetually leaving you in a state of yearning, of wanting more. I suppose we'll see how this will end for the Tians. Fangfang's toy camera shows up. Looking through it, we see the portrait of the family, still missing Miss Zhao. Flipping the image, we enter into, I guess, Fangfang's sort of drawing world. In the living room, we find another note from her diary. It reads, "Today we went to see the old lady we visited last time. Grandma said we could see Dad. Grandpa wouldn't go. Before we left, we folded a lot of shiny paper ingots. We then make one ourselves. This is more of that Taoist paper art, this time resembling a saisi, a type of gold or silver ingot used as currency in imperial China. And today, it's a folk tradition to make them out of paper, and burn them alongside the paper money we talked about in the beginning. Perhaps the paper boat, in this case as an offering to Tian Yu, could symbolically serve to help his trip across the Naihe River, this gap between the waking world and the afterlife. The adults don't let Fangfang inside, as the ritual could be dangerous to someone so young, so she stays outside. The adults in her life focused on bringing back Tian Yu, and she left alone. We dive through her imagination, watching a small tadpole swim through a river, meeting a frog muttering incoherent, strange spells. It reminds her of her dad. We haven't really heard anything from Fangfang surrounding her dad yet, and from this comparison, we can imagine, to her, there's a lot of mystery surrounding his death. It's already difficult for a child to come to terms with the finality of death, but when the adults around her are holding these rituals to talk to the dead, I imagine it only adds to her confusion. Instead of helping her process the loss of her father, These supernatural explanations probably blur the line between reality and fantasy, keeping her from ever truly understanding or even accepting her loss. This is the perfect scenario to have a child develop all sorts of complexes later in life, in my opinion. We then find a mermaid, trying to find her way back home to the ocean. The ocean is vast and everyone lives freely in it. There are so many twists and turns and dead ends here. I really want to help Mama Mermaid, but I can't find the way out either. This mermaid is most likely meant to be Fangfang herself, her desire to escape this pond, this broken home life, and most importantly, her desire to help her mother, which we'll see at the end will be the single most important factor in her character. Fangfang gets yelled at by her teacher and gets punished for daydreaming in class. We're in her classroom and Miss Chen is gone. On the blackboard is a little mural welcoming her. Now we have to take an embarrassing amount of time solving this image slide puzzle to get a key. When we go over to the toy camera to flip the image, we see 3 doll heads drawn on the blackboard, and on the right, where we need to use the key. While making our way to it, we find a drawing of those same heads, except with red cheeks. We use the key on the drawer, get some red chalk, and draw those red cheeks on the doll heads. When we flip the image back, the heads are meant to be Fangfang's old teachers and some other school faculty. They're extremely impatient with her and comment on her doodling on her textbook, stating that she'll never achieve anything like this. But through this barrage of cynical comments comes in a new teacher. She tells her to go home, but Fangfang says she has to stay and copy the text as her punishment for not paying attention. Miss Chen comes up with an idea. They'll play that little fortune teller origami game. I don't remember what it's called, and if she lands on a smiley face, she gets to go home. We pick a number and see that all the faces are smiling, so of course it lands on a smiling face, and Fangfang no longer has to stay after school. But she really loves the little origami star thing, whatever it's called, and asks if Miss Chen will stay and teach her how to make them. They make a bunch of these nameless things. You know what, I don't even think they have a name. And we get this sequence where every time you move over something, a horribly mismatched piano note plays. These pleasant times with Miss Chen are soon over, however. While at dinner, the grandparents talk about going to see the spirit medium. Mr. Tian seems interested in the grandmother's visit. She says basic stuff. Yu misses us and wants us to take care of Fangfang, but also supposedly said for his father, Mr. Tian, to not blame himself, and that he doesn't regret being born into the Tian family. After hearing this, the grandfather goes out for a walk, and the grandmother says she's not hungry, and goes to light some incense for her son, leaving Fangfang alone with this headless fish on her plate. This headless fish shows up a couple of times, and it's quite interesting, because from what I've gathered, the word for fish in Chinese is yu, which is the same or at least similar to the father's name. So in this sense, we could see the headless fish as being symbolic for the father himself, which I believe is definitely the case, as we will see much later. But perhaps more interestingly, it's also my understanding that it's common Chinese dining etiquette to serve the fish whole, head, body, and tail. And while fish can carry many symbolic meanings in Chinese culture, I found that the fish head in particular can represent family unity or harmony. So the absence of the head then becomes a clear symbol of the Tian family's overall dysfunction after Yu's death. Fangfang says, "The fish mom cooked is delicious, but my mom doesn't like fish. I asked Grandma why mom can cook fish well even when she hates them. Grandma told me it's because my dad and I like fish. Mom loves me and Dad so much that she'll even do things that she doesn't like. I asked Grandma if I have to do things I don't like if I love someone. Grandma didn't answer me. She told me that kids shouldn't ask this sort of question. I mean, the answer is pretty simple, right? You don't have to do things you don't like for someone you love. You'll probably want to do them since you love them, no?" Perhaps this question hit a little close to home. After all, the grandmother is clearly superstitious, yet allowed her husband to do his grave robbing business, presumably for the benefit of herself and the rest of the family. I suppose to her, when asked that question, what comes to mind is not the act of cooking food you don't like to see your daughter happy, but the thought that the actions of her husband, and her permission of them, might have caused her son's death, at least in her view. We move on though. This time, the mother's bedroom door is the one that opens, and we find a ticket for a fortune teller called Vase Girl. We have to place 2 important items on the bowl to get some answers relating to the owner of said item. We get this marble with a star, which is associated with Miss Chen, and a crow feather belonging to Fangfang's mother, Miss Zhao. We'll talk later about Miss Zhao's relation to birds and why it's important to her story. Anyway, you place them on the bowl and... the vase girl pops out. Now, as far as I can tell, this is not really a reference to any cultural aspect or mythos in China. If you know what this sort of image of the vase girl could be referencing specifically, please let me know. We first ask her about Fangfang's mother. She says, after the father died, the grandfather beat up the doctor who treated his son. The mother secretly visited the doctor. She said the doctor was a good person who did nothing wrong. Lixun questions if Miss Zhao and Dr. Ye had an affair, but the vase girl says she can only answer one question about one person. Then we ask her about Miss Chen. She says, Miss Chen is different from other teachers. She's like a big sister and is very gentle to us, but she's very mysterious. I asked her why she came here to teach. She always answered, that's a secret. As you might have suspected, there's a little more to Miss Chen than we might think. We then notice a school award won by Fangfang. When we rip it up, for some reason, we find Lixun's own school award we found in his bedroom, which I think serves to further connect Fangfang and Lixun, as he most likely relates to her due to his own father passing at a young age. We rip Lixun's award and find a new story about his father. He died during a gunfight with a criminal and was considered a hero, not just for his death, but for his whole career as a police officer. And then another news story, this time about Lixun being such an outstanding student representing his town, portrayed as the legacy of his great father. We rip that up to finally find a mirror. Lixun speaks about the immense pressure he felt after his father's death, feeling like he was being watched and judged in every facet of his life, worrying he would disgrace his father's legacy. Miss Chen shows up out of nowhere, saying that she turned around and we just disappeared. She says the entrance door is open again, with another set of stairs just like before, so we go explore it. But before we go, now that we're with Miss Chen, she can give us more insight when examining things around the house. When we ask about the child's bed stacked with boxes, she says Fangfang told her her grandmother would not let her sleep in the same room with her mom, since about half a year ago. She's slept in the grandparents' room ever since. Here is the, I guess, second sign of separation between Miss Zhao and the rest of the family. The first being the family portrait, where she is, for some reason, missing, only present in Fangfang's hand-drawn version. But we still don't know why there seems to be this static between the grandparents and Miss Zhao. Anyway, we go to the entrance hall and make our way down the stairs again. We reach Dr. Ye's clinic, except it's completely trashed, and a doctor, presumably Dr. Ye himself, is limping away. When we go through the door, however, we are somewhere else. Miss Chen says it's at a different, bigger hospital. We finally see Fangfang's mother, Miss Zhao, so we follow her to see who she's visiting in the hospital. Overhearing the conversation in different rooms, we gather that Dr. Ye is here. We're visiting the time after Tian Yu died in his clinic and the grandfather came to beat up Dr. Ye, believing he had killed him. Dr. Ye apologizes to Miss Zhao for the loss of her husband, but she reassures him that it wasn't his fault. Apparently Tian Yu came to Dr. Ye's clinic much later than he should have, because he was taking his parents' home remedies instead. Miss Zhao warns Dr. Ye that her father-in-law might demand compensation, and so she offers him some money that she saved up so he doesn't have to use his own. But he declines, saying he doesn't have any family to take care of, and she does. They then say their goodbyes and that's that. Now we're back in the Tian house, and we ask Miss Chen about Miss Zhao, and she says there are many rumors about her, that she was tricked into coming into this town, that she married Tian Yu for his family's money, and of course that she had lost her mind after her husband's death, which then led people to believe she had killed the Tian family. Miss Chen says, as you saw just now, she was a kind-hearted person. She wasn't obsessed with money, and she would not kill her own family. Moving on, we put together the family portrait. The hair consumes the portrait. As we talked about before, the hair is strongly associated with Miss Zhao. so it's quite fitting here since we're about to learn a lot more about her. We are then transported to a photo studio. Miss Chen says she used to work at a photo studio and that's where she met Tian Yu. Noticing Lixun's silence, she asks what's on his mind. Lixun says, "Miss Chen, I hope you won't mind what I'm about to say. I think you know the Tian family too well. It seems to me that you've gone out of your way to investigate them. You had come to Qingsui and covered a story previously, right?" Miss Chen admits that she was a journalist before coming here to be a volunteer teacher, and that after the death of the Tian family, she investigated them. She says it was simply an old habit from her previous job, which is why, when we met her, she said she would send any evidence to the press. For the sake of fairness, Miss Chen asks how Lixun knows that she had covered a story in Qingsui before, but Lixun's like, nah. Although Miss Chen believes she looks literally fucking obese in this photo, Lixun notices a blank frame in the backdrop. We rip the backdrop and while looking at the frame, listen in on past conversations. Tian Yu showing Miss Zhao the house his father built for them. He asks Miss Zhao for her input in the decorations. We, now as Miss Zhao, rip up parts of the backdrop to decorate the frame. Then some toys for Fangfang. Then Tian Yu convinces her to move in, for her to leave the photo studio and dedicate herself to the family, mentioning the high-paying job at the bank his grandfather would get for him. This whole scene, I believe, is meant to represent Miss Zhao's sacrifice in coming to Qingsui, saying, "My past is riddled with holes. Will my future be fulfilling?" Miss Zhao answers the phone. It's the grandmother. She frantically tells Miss Zhao that Miss Zhang, that shaman they've been visiting to talk to their son, has been arrested, most likely due to fraud or possibly exploitation. The grandmother is absolutely heartbroken, saying, "How can I see my Yu in the future?" She wants to pay for her bail, and Miss Zhao says she'll help get the money. But to herself she thinks, "This is like an absurd drama. I feel like my husband has died again." This harkens back well to what I said previously about how this pseudo-communication with the dead can prolong or even halt the natural grieving process. She then thinks, "But I'm not as sad as I was when it happened the first time. I even feel a sense of relief. The made-up Tian Yu is like a bottomless pit, but they madly throw their money and energy into it. I'm afraid of this madness. I'm afraid it'll devour Fangfang. And now, this madness has finally come to an end." On the right, Tian Yu is gone from the portrait, leaving only the black background. When we try to open Miss Zhao's room, the portrait follows us, the same black void, most likely representing that new, resurrected Tian Yu, which Miss Zhao equates to a bottomless pit. We enter Miss Zhao's room and rip out these silhouettes representing Miss Zhao and Fangfang to get a code from Miss Zhao's diary. On the first entry, she says her in-laws went to visit the spirit medium in prison, and that although she will likely stay in prison for a long time, that her in-laws look less distressed after talking to her. The second entry is about Fangfang's drawing, and how Miss Chen says she has a talent for drawing, and perhaps she could participate in some sort of art competition. I find it interesting that Fangfang still draws her father next to them, as if he's still with them. Like I said before, these visits to the spirit medium have most likely halted the grieving process for her. In the next entry, Miss Zhao talks about how her grandmother made Fangfang sleep in their room. She wanted to see her, but they locked the door. Why is it that the grandparents want Miss Zhao so isolated? The next entry reads, "I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but I always feel like someone is watching me." I found a dead crow in our yard this morning. I buried her. She calls the crow a her, and I think that's deliberate, because I believe the crow is very much a representation of Miss Zhao herself. When we talked to the Vase Girl, the crow feather was symbolic of her, and in order to get the crow feather, we had to align this cage. The crow symbolizes Miss Zhao's confinement and isolation. Her reason for moving here, for upending her entire life, was originally Tian Yu, but of course he's dead, and she seems to be the only one who accepts that fact. Then her new reason for staying here no doubt became Fangfang, but through the in-laws, she's slowly being isolated from her own daughter. She then talks about how a tree began to sprout from this dead bird, and this tree, you'll see, is symbolic for Tian Yu. While pruning the tree in the balcony, the grandmother shows up. She asks what she's doing up so late. Miss Zhao says she felt someone was here in the balcony, and that when she got here, Some dead leaves had somehow been trimmed off. The grandmother explains that was Yu's favorite plant, and that he had asked about it through the spirit medium. Maybe he visited the tree to see how it was doing. The grandmother is uneasy about the medium being in jail, but for some reason, Miss Zhao plays along and says father will find a solution. From what I know, it's somewhat common in a lot of East Asian cultures to call your in-laws by mother and father, just in case that caused any confusion. We go to the kitchen and find Miss Zhao's diary again, except it's locked and we have to find a wedding ring to unlock it. Going to the right, we find that the kitchen becomes a graveyard. Miss Chen says that it's the Tian family's ancestral graveyard. After their death, they were all buried here. When we go in, we hear a little girl's voice calling out for Miss Chen. We go through the graveyard and that little girl paper doll shows us the way again, just like in the beginning of the game. This is most definitely meant to be Fangfang, or at least a representation of her. We find the note that reads, "My body will not rot in the mud. Like a bird, I'll die in the sky." Miss Chen says this was Zhao's suicide note, and that certainly makes sense. This imagery speaks to the themes of confinement and freedom, which align with how Miss Zhao was previously represented through the symbol of a bird, and to some extent a bird cage. We then come across that headless fish again. A single red scale stands out among the others. We try to pull it out and reveal a finger. What we see appears to be Miss Zhao's finger, identifiable by her wedding band. Now, we've already talked about how the headless fish could symbolize Tian Yu, but more specifically Tian Yu after his death, since the fish serves as a reminder of him. So Miss Zhao's finger emerging from the fish suggests a deeper connection between her and her husband after he died. But how could that be? After all, it's not like Miss Zhao believes in the spirit medium, and she even views this new pseudo-resurrected Tian Yu the grandparents are obsessed with as a bottomless pit. But of course, we'll get an answer to that a little later. We look up to find the paper doll staring at us. Above them is what is known as the double happiness character, since it combines two Chinese characters that mean happiness, and it's typically seen in traditional weddings. In this case, we can see it not as a wedding, but more broadly as a union between Tian Yu and Miss Zhao. Not a union in a traditional sense. Again, it'll make sense a little later. Just settle down. We go back to the kitchen to place the wedding ring here and open the lock on Miss Zhao's diary. She begins talking about someone secretly eating some fish again, which doesn't make sense since Tian Yu was the only one who liked fish, other than Fangfang, but she doesn't seem to think it was her. A couple days after, she finds some cigarette butts while cleaning, yet Tian Yu was the only smoker in the house. In the end, she asks herself, was Tian Yu back? In the next entry she writes, "I went to the bathroom to get some sleeping pills. Otherwise, I could not sleep. I started to believe that Tian Yu had returned. He must be watching me in the corner." In the last page, presumably Tian Yu writes that he misses her. We are now playing as Miss Zhao. The grandmother shows up and asks her to pick up some medicine on the other side of town, because of course the Tians stopped visiting Dr. Ye's clinic after their son died. Miss Zhao brings up the topic of Fangfang moving to a school in the city. Miss Chen even said that after winning some student contest, it would be a lot easier for her to apply. But the grandmother dismisses that idea, saying that her and her husband don't have many years left and would like to spend it close to Fangfang. While on the way to the other pharmacy, the camera stops at where Wang Jinkai's small store is located. Someone is buying some cigarettes, but the store owner stays silent. This person says, "Why are you staring at me? What's the matter? Have you seen a ghost?" The store owner can't speak. "You don't recognize me? I'm Tian Yu. You switched off your light at night. No wonder you can't recognize me." Miss Zhao then seems to snap out of it, and doesn't seem to have any recollection of the last few minutes. Mom is getting more and more weird lately. She takes care of the flowers that Dad planted, smokes the cigarettes Dad smoked, and does a lot of things Dad liked to do. What happened to Mom? Lixun and Miss Chen are justifiably shocked. So Miss Zhao was possessed by Tian Yu's spirit? And this would explain why the rumor of Miss Zhao going mad just before the death of the Tian family started. But Miss Chen is still unsure, saying that Miss Zhao only seems to behave strangely when her mother-in-law was around. Although, as Lixun says, it could just be a coincidence, seeing as they live in the same house and everything. We go to check who it is. Looking through the door window, we see a faint silhouette. Looking under the door, we quickly go and hide in the closet. Lixun says he heard Fangfang's voice just now, and that he felt her pull him into the closet. That man was definitely the grandfather. Notice how he knocked on the door before opening it, and how as soon as he's inside, he seems to flip through Miss Zhao's diary. As we'll soon see, Miss Zhao's possession is most definitely related to the grandparents in some way. As we walk out, we follow a trail of candles. Parents shed tears drenching their clothes. The wife and daughter's face are filled with sorrow. I yearn for my son day and night, hoping his soul will return. Come back, come back. The underworld is dangerous. Come back, come back. The water under the Nahi Bridge is cold. I mentioned the Nahi River or Nahi Bridge before when talking about those paper boats the family would make before visiting the spirit medium. I personally find it intuitive to understand Nahi Bridge as the Chinese mythological equivalent of the river Styx from Greek mythology. And just like how the family made paper boats to help communicate with Tianyu, we must now make our own to cross into the Diyu, the underworld of Chinese mythos. We then follow a path of brown rice. This is likely a reference to various Taoist funerary practices, where rice might be used to create intricate murals or ritual patterns. These are typically made as an offering of respect for the deceased, and in some cases to help guide the spirits safely into the afterlife. From what I understand, however, Taoist funeral traditions can vary widely depending on the region, local customs, or in some cases even specific family traditions. So it can be difficult to pinpoint the exact origins behind these practices, especially since much of the available information, I assume, is found primarily on the Chinese side of the internet. So you kind of have to search through alternative sources, like Singaporean or Taiwanese websites. At least that's what I did. We make it across and notice that Miss Chen is no longer with us again. The family is getting ready for the ritual, and the grandmother asks Miss Zhao to keep an eye on the fish that they're cooking. And we transition into the Diyu, the underworld, where we see a man being tortured. On this tree is a message. It reads, "Sinner, though he did not rob graves, he benefited from them. His sins are unforgivable. He will suffer 163 million years of dismemberment in his father's stead. He must not leave until his term is due." Looking at the man's hand, we see a wedding band, just like Miss Zhao's. There's no doubt that this is Tianyu. The grandparents make Miss Zhao eat the fish, as a symbol for Tianyu. But Lixun notes, Tianyu was being tortured here the whole time. There's no way he could possess Miss Zhao. What was summoned by the Tians? They get desperate and push Miss Zhao to eat the fish, even though she can't stand the taste of it. Miss Zhao says, "Mom, the fish is really delicious." In a burnt bowl, we see Miss Zhao's diary, discarded, as if it lost its use. Was Miss Zhao really possessed, or was she simply pretending, using the diary as a tool to sell the whole scheme? knowing that she had no privacy and the grandparents would look through it while she was not present. While we're leaving though, something calls out to us. Covered mirror. We pull the cloth covering it. It's Lixun, but not quite. We could perhaps see this reflection as a symbol of repression. Lixun often avoids mirrors, but perhaps by attempting a form of introspection with this reflection, he can gain some valuable insight that is already within him. The reflection asks, "Hey, why are you so obsessed with the Tian family's case? Does it matter who the murderer is? They're dead anyway. I'm a cop now. It's my duty to bring justice to the dead. Where did you learn that cliché? Even if you find the murderer, will it do you any good? Remember, you have to handle more big cases and collect more honors." This is the part of Lixun who is constantly insecure and attempting to live up to expectations set by his father's death. Give up this case. There's a bigger case right in front of you. What case? You know it. I don't know what you're talking about. Then answer me. Why did you allow that Miss Chen to get involved in the investigation? She knows the Tian family very well. I believe she can provide a lot of clues. You're avoiding the main point. She seems reliable and she's helped a lot. Oh please, who would believe these excuses? I know you don't want to answer my question. You haven't changed at all. You like to keep secrets. Let me tell you, by allowing Miss Chen to join you in the investigation, you can take the opportunity to learn more about the tomb robbery Mr. Tian took part in. You know it's a big case. If you can bring down an entire grave robbing syndicate, you'll gain a lot of contributions. Miss Chen and Fangfang were close, so you want to get more clues from Miss Chen. Did I get you wrong? I know exactly what you're thinking. I'm different now. Yes, you grew a little taller and a little more mature, but you still haven't changed. You need more approval and honors. I know that nothing will come out from investigating the Tian family murder case, but I want to get the answer to the question that's been bothering me all this time. What's the question? Since you can read my mind, why ask me? Lin Lixun, you can't change the outcome of the case. The reflection disappears. Now, I said at the beginning that the answer to this game's riddles is logical, not necessarily superstitious. Hence the phrase in the graffiti, "Believe in science, not superstition." So is Tian Yu actually suffering from his father's crimes in the underworld? I don't know. Probably. I guess some things might never have a concrete answer. What is the meaning of life? Is there a perfect concrete moral system? Why is it that in this world there is something and not just nothing? Why are the women that work at the pharmacy always so good looking? We just can't know these things. We are then transported into the criminal investigation department, where we find within a folder dedicated to the Tian case that rat poison was detected in Miss Zhao's sleeping pills. The police have confidently ruled out the possibility of tampering by the staff of the clinic who sold Miss Zhao the pills. There are 3 unique fingerprints on the bottle cap. One is from Miss Zhao, the other 2 are yet to be identified. Looking at the folder containing the motive for the murder, it's exactly as we heard. People believed Miss Zhao was mentally ill and had suicidal thoughts for a long time. Due to her mental instability, she put the poison meant for herself in the congee meant for the family. But of course, by this point, we know Miss Zhao was not mentally unstable in any way. We are now back in the Tian house and pick up the phone. We hear a conversation between Miss Zhao and Miss Chen about transferring Fangfang to a school in the city. Miss Chen asks if the grandparents are okay with this. Miss Zhao lies and says that they came around to the idea. Miss Zhao then mentions she found the thing Miss Chen was looking for, and she'll send it to her whenever she gets the chance. Whatever that could be. She thanks Miss Chen. After all, it's thanks to her that she can finally leave this place with her daughter. Miss Chen shows up, and we ask her what was the thing she was looking for that Miss Zhao mentioned. She reveals that when she was a journalist, she actually came to this town to cover a story. She had heard that Mr. Tian and the small shop owner were selling stolen cultural relics. Being a volunteer teacher was all part of her disguise to integrate into the town. Since Miss Zhao wanted to get Fangfang out of this town, but the grandparents wouldn't let her, they struck a deal. Miss Zhao would hand over Mr. Tian's ledger, where he kept all of his transactions and clients, and once Mr. Tian and his accomplices were arrested, Miss Chen would ensure that she could leave the town with Fangfang and enroll her in a school in the city. We ask her if she has the ledger, but the Tian family all died before she ever got it. But now it's time to find the matching prints for the sleeping pill bottle. That will surely help us find out who's responsible for poisoning the family. We get Miss Zhao's fingerprint from the clothing iron, the grandfather's from the grandfather clock, and Fangfang's from the toy camera. We match Miss Zhao's fingerprint and see a small snippet of an interaction between her and Fangfang. She asks her mother if she's sick. She explains that she's fine. Those pills are just to help her sleep. Fangfang asks if she can have one, but Miss Zhao explains, "You're a kid. You don't have enough worries to keep you up all night. Will all your worries be gone after this?" I wake up without any worries. "That's why you look a lot happier lately." Fangfang then remembers it'll be her birthday soon, and her mother tells her that she'll buy a big cake for her. She then says, "Listen to me. Kids cannot take this medicine. Fangfang is a good kid, so don't touch it, okay?" And she says that she won't. The very next fingerprint, though, is Fangfang's. The last fingerprint is from the grandfathers. Both of them approach the bottle and the grandmother asks, "Hey, are you sure you want to do this? I think I can handle seeing you once a week." The grandfather responds, "Don't you want to see you every day?" "Of course I do, but you've seen it yourself. She's really possessed by you. The shaman said if Zhao's soul leaves her body when we summon Yu's soul over, he can stay in her body forever. That way, our son will live with us again. Don't worry, the poison I got is strong, and she'll die quietly, so the body can remain complete. Poisoning someone to death, I'm afraid we'll get caught. If someone asks, just say our daughter-in-law has gone mad and committed suicide by taking rat poison. I've told Wang Jinkai, the store owner. Is he trustworthy? We've worked together many years. He has never leaked anything. If I get caught, he won't get away either." "Alright then." Miss Chen is sure Mr. Tian poisoned the pills, but Lixun says that it can't be that simple. After all, Mr. Tian knew the pills were poisoned. Why would he poison the family's dinner? And so Lixun lays out how he believed it all happened, starting with Tian Yu's death. Grieving their son, Tian Yu's mother asks a witch to summon his soul. A soul summoning requires a living body. Miss Zhao was their best option. Fangfang might have heard something about this, even if not precisely, and tells her mother about it. Miss Zhao decides to play along and pretends to be possessed by Tian Yu's spirit. Lixun suspects she played along to try and convince the grandparents into letting her take Fangfang to a school in the city, and of course, get away from this place. That all went well, the only problem being that the summoning ritual can only be performed every 7 days. And as we saw before, the grandparents wanted to see their son every day. The only way to do that, at least in their minds, was to kill Miss Zhao, leaving her body an empty vessel for Tian Yu to take over. But if it wasn't the grandparents, and it wasn't Miss Zhao, then it could only have been one person that poisoned the family. As her mother goes to pick up some medication, she leaves the pot boiling. Fangfang, tired of seeing her mother wither away emotionally, and her grandparents slowly losing their minds over her father, who she probably never even got to know very well, drops sleeping pills into the pot. The sleeping pills, her mother said, took all her worries away. That seemed to make her happier. The family presumably started eating without Miss Zhao, and when she got home, she saw her family dead, sitting at the dinner table. Miss Zhao can't imagine life without her daughter, at least not one worth living, and so she writes her suicide note, something which attempts to defy her feelings of confinement and suffocation after her husband's death. "My body will not rot into the mud. Like a bird, I'll die in the sky." Back in what seems to be the real world now, the two of them wonder if people would even believe that the family was killed by Fangfang. Before we leave, Miss Chen wants to tell us something, that she actually did get Mr. Tian's ledger before the incident, and she already sent it to the press. We tell her it's okay. It would have been the same as sending it to us. What matters is that Mr. Tian's illegal activities will be exposed. I guess this proves Lixun doesn't really care that much about getting more honors. As we leave, Miss Chen says she left something at the Tian's house. We hear a phone ring and we go answer it. As usual, we don't answer a phone as much as we hear a conversation from the past between Miss Chen and her boss from the press. He's received the ledger, and Miss Chen questions why there are names of their company executives on it, and will they too be published. Her boss says some of them cannot be made public. He tells her to leave the town, as it might not be safe for her to stay there anymore, and she simply replies that she has to prepare class. They end the conversation and her boss tells her to stay safe. Miss Chen is soon declared missing. She was last seen wearing a white blouse, long blue skirt, red hairband, and was carrying a red umbrella. It's now fairly obvious that Miss Chen died not long after the Tian family. We've been talking essentially to a ghost. She was likely killed due to being the only person who knew about the company executives dealing with Mr. Tian. It is important to note, however, that her spirit was completely focused on finding out the truth behind the death of Fangfang and Miss Zhao, not some grand conspiracy. And in her last moments, she was simply worried about leaving her class. The students, believing Miss Chen fell into the river, light these lotus lanterns, something typically done during the Ghost Festival, to help lost souls find their way to the afterlife. We wake up in the hospital after yet another blackout. What if everything we've been seeing is just a CTE-fueled hallucination from banging our head when we pass out? Dude, CTE, that shit's serious. BJ Penn thinks his mom is a clone, and John Jones thinks he's the GOAT of the sport. It's actually quite sad when you think about it. After some chit-chat, our partner tells us that there's actually a new suspect in the Tian family murder case, Dr. Ye. They said they discovered some poison in the salt over at the Tian house. The bag had been resealed, and they found the same salt packages in the clinic's storeroom. But none of this is adding up. We already know what happened to the Tians, and it wasn't eating poisoned salt. Now they tell us not only that Dr. Ye is responsible, that he's also dead, burned to death. Near the Tian house, his car was completely burnt, and an unrecognizable body was found and sent to autopsy. The cause of the fire? Fireworks, set off by a cigarette butt, and we do know that Dr. Ye did smoke in secret. Something's wrong. We recall our first meeting with Dr. Ye. He never took a drag of a cigarette. It's like he just wanted us to see him smoking. But why would he pretend to smoke? Miss Zhao also managed to fool her in-laws into believing she smoked. We get a vision of Miss Zhao and Dr. Ye. Dr. Ye was the one who helped her concoct the plan of pretending to be possessed by the spirit of Tian Yu, so that she can escape this town, showing her how she doesn't need to actually smoke, just confidently pretend to smoke to sell the idea. We ask to see Dr. Ye's body. The coroner shows up, telling us she used to go to school with Dr. Ye. He was extremely talented, but his parents didn't want him to become a forensic doctor, as they believed it would bring bad luck. The common theme of superstition seems to also be the background of Dr. Ye's life. We reassemble the body's ribcage to see that this couldn't possibly be Dr. Ye's body, as his ribcage would show some signs of healing after they were broken by Mr. Tian. Dr. Ye is still alive. The police close off all transportation out of the town, and we meet with Dr. Ye at the train station. Things start to make more sense. The fireworks in his truck, and in the shop owner's casket, Dr. Ye used the shop owner's burnt body to fake his own death, planting the idea in us that he was a smoker and that he could have died burnt in his truck, all the while manufacturing evidence that would have the police believe that he's the main suspect in the Tian family case, taking away blame from Miss Zhao. But why do all this for her? Well, he first related to her, feeling like he was stuck in this town himself, due to his own parents' superstition about him being a forensic doctor. He saw Miss Zhao suffering here and wanted to help her, but then, believing his plan for her to escape was the catalyst for the death of the whole family, seeing people say Miss Zhao was a madwoman who killed her family, he was overwhelmed with guilt, and arranged things so that he would be blamed for their murder. Dr. Ye is finally arrested for his crimes, and the town comes together to mourn Miss Chen. During the funeral, fireworks light up the sky, a powerful image, and of course a recurring theme throughout this game. I believe the fireworks are a symbol. They are beautiful, bright, and full of life, but it only lasts for a moment before fading into darkness. An analogy for life itself, fragile, fleeting, and I suppose all the more precious because of it.
Don't make fun of the nerd. He might just become a mafia boss.
Circus, 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 circus.